The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
You know, we had some interesting conversation, and some of his ideas really are the same ideas that I have.
Capitalism and socialism collide at the White House. President Trump meeting with New York City's incoming Democratic Socialist mayor for the first time. How the two say they plan to work together.
I'm going to sue Biden's DOJ and Jack Smith. I'm going to sue Verizon. It's going to be a hell of a lot more than $500,000.
The growing outrage over subpoenaed phone records in connection to the January 6, 2021 Capitol attack and the feud it's triggered between the Senate and the House. Then President Trump gives Ukraine less than a week to agree to a peace plan that one official there says is nothing short of surrender. What exactly is being proposed? Good evening, I'm Taylor Murray. Welcome to the National News Desk, America's News Now. All eyes on the White House today for the highly anticipated meeting of President Trump and incoming New York City Mayor and Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani. It's the first ever meeting between the two who have hurled insults back and forth. The president has called Mamdani a communist, while the mayor-elect has described the current presidential administration as authoritarian. But the tone of the Oval Office following their talks leaning more into finding common ground than remaining at odds, something the president, in his own words, called surprising.
I think you're at really a turning point, one way or the other. It could go great or it can go in a different direction, and I think you really have a chance to make it great.
The discussion between the two focused largely on affordability, which carries high stakes for Mamdani, who campaigned on lowering the cost of living for New Yorkers. But President Trump has previously threatened to withhold federal funding for New York City if Mamdani won, which of course he did. But today, President Trump appeared to take that threat off the table.
New York is at a very critical point, and he does need the help of the federal government to really succeed. And we're going to be helping them.
The meeting that we had focused not on places of disagreement, which there are many, and also focused on the shared purpose that we have in serving New Yorkers. And frankly, that is something that could transform the lives of the 8.5 million people who are currently struggling under a cost of living crisis, with 1 in 4 living in poverty.
Just hours before President Trump met with Mamdani, the House passed a Republican-led resolution condemning socialism. 86 Democrats joined with Republicans to overwhelmingly approve the measure. 2 others voted present, and no Republican voted to oppose it. Notably, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who endorsed Mamdani just days before the mayoral election, also voted in favor of the measure. President Trump says he is not threatening death against a group of Democratic lawmakers. That's what he told Brian Kilmeade in an interview today. It comes after Trump on Truth Social yesterday reacted to a video with a group of Democrats telling service members to disobey illegal orders. Trump posted that this was, quote, seditious behavior, then added punishable by death. His comments received more backlash today.
To be honest, the president's remarks I think, indicate a level of instability. It's not just shocking, it's not just offensive, it's bizarre, it is erratic, it's volatile, and I think it indicates a mental state that we should all be questioning right now.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt defended the president, saying members of Congress should not encourage people to disobey the administration's orders. Well, the fate of hundreds of people detained in the federal Operation Midway Blitz in Chicago remains in limbo. Thursday, an appeals court ordered a stay of their release, saying more time is needed to review whether the arrest violated a consent decree. An in-person hearing is set for next month. Now, meanwhile, local leaders and immigration advocates gathered this morning outside of the Chicago area Broadview ICE facility, where some detainees have alleged inhumane conditions inside.
I will continue to call for increased access to oversight of this facility. I will continue to call for transparency of those who are detained.
Recently, a judge granted the request of detainees for a class action lawsuit against the Department of Homeland Security and Border Patrol agents. This week, Justice Department lawyers said only 4 detainees remain inside that Broadview facility. Meanwhile, protests against ICE agents in the Broadview village remain volatile, and a civil emergency is still in place amid threats to officers and officials. Now to New Orleans, the next stop on the Department of Homeland Security's immigration crackdown. In the coming weeks, roughly 250 federal border agents are set to arrive for a 2-month immigration crackdown. Already today, some agents are expected in the city for logistics planning, and they say to position equipment and vehicles. The operation, dubbed Swamp Sweep, is expected to begin December 1st. Additional enforcement is being planned in neighboring southeastern Mississippi. The details remain limited there, though. Police in Missouri say a man was shot and killed by an officer at the St. Louis airport after wielding a knife early this morning outside the doors of a terminal. Now, authorities did not identify the man, but said he wasn't in a permitted area and refused to leave. Police say they do not believe the man was trying to catch a plane, and authorities are investigating why the man was there in the first place and why he needed to be removed. Today, former New York corrections officers were sentenced for their involvement in the death of an inmate. 2 of them received 22 years in prison for the death of Robert Brooks Sr. The 43-year-old was fatally beaten at the Marcy Correctional Facility. This was last December. 2 other former officers received shorter sentences, and they all previously pleaded guilty to manslaughter charges. Well, over in Ohio, the police officer who killed a pregnant black woman accused of shoplifting has been acquitted. Today, Connor Grubb was found not guilty of murder, involuntary manslaughter, and felonious assault in the 2023 death of Takia Young. In body camera video, Young refused Grubb's orders to leave her parked car, then slowly drove towards Grubb, who then shot her through the windshield. President Trump is being pressured to release the transcript of a phone call that occurred with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman after journalist Jamal Khashoggi's brutal assassination in 2018.
There is no justification to kidnap him, torture him, and to kill him and to cut him to pieces. This is a terrorist act.
That's Khashoggi's wife during an emotional press conference today demanding the release of the transcript. Virginia Representative Eugene Vindman revealed its existence. He has not, however, provided many details about what was said other than to say it's shocking. Trump called Jamal Khashoggi controversial at the White House during a meeting with Saudi's Crown Prince earlier this week. Well, Republican outrage over subpoenaed phone records in connection to the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol is growing. As the National News Desk Matt Gelka reports, it's also led to a rift over how to remedy the situation.
House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan says he's the latest Republican whose phone records were subpoenaed as part of the Arctic Frost investigation. The inquiry, set up by Jack Smith in the Department of Justice under the Biden administration to probe what led up to the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Jordan says the ask for his records was overreach, claiming the FBI sought 28 months of data and asked Verizon not to alert the congressman.
We knew they spied on President Trump. We knew we had learned here in the last several weeks that it was, senators and some other members. But this was for 2.5 years.
In October, the Senate Judiciary Committee revealed Republican cell phone records were also targeted in the investigation. But the data only covered from January 4th to January 7th of 2021.
I think the way they subpoenaed Congressman Jordan's records is abnormal. After all, they subpoenaed a year of his records before the insurrection that took place on January 6th of 2021. So it seems like it's overreach to have taken all of his records and not to have told him.
The fallout from the investigation has spilled over to a feud between the Senate and House and Congress. The bill passed to reopen the government also allows only senators to sue the DOJ for at least $500,000 because their phone records were searched without their knowledge.
The Senate Republicans snuck in, and this is literally true, they snuck in the dark of night, a provision at the last minute that would allow them to basically line their pockets.
The House unanimously passed a bill repealing it, with bipartisan pushback against lawmakers being able to enrich themselves. But it was blocked from going forward in the Senate.
I'm going to sue. I want to let you know. I'm going to sue Biden's DOJ and Jack Smith. I'm going to sue Verizon. It's going to be a hell of a lot more than $500,000.
South Carolina Republican Lindsey Graham, whose records were also part of the investigation, said it was about protecting lawmakers. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
3 federal judges just upheld several North Carolina U.S. House districts drawn by Republicans. The justices rejected accusations of the lines diluting the political power of black voters. In 2023, North Carolina redistricted after its conservative Supreme Court cleared the way for partisan gerrymandering. Now, the panel is still considering recent redistricting plans made by the state GOP. Nationwide, both Democrats and Republicans are in favor of off-decade gerrymandering efforts to give their side a boost ahead of next year's elections. That's according to a new Politico poll showing 54% of Democrat voters and 53% of GOP voters feel that way. But there's more support among Democrats for trying to neutralize the other party rather than gain an advantage. Right now, the redistricting push is a draw between the two parties. Still ahead, the plan that President Trump says Ukraine must agree to by Thanksgiving or risk losing American support. Then, could American taxpayer dollars be funding terrorism overseas? The state at the center of what could be one of the biggest fraud waves in U.S. history. Plus, a woman was kidnapped in San Antonio and taken to a motel inside the rescue mission that led to the suspect's arrest. We're back in 90 seconds. Ukrainian leaders and European allies are taking a strong stance against a plan crafted by the Trump administration to end Russia's invasion. It's a plan President Trump says Ukraine must agree to by Thanksgiving, or the U.S. could pull back its support for Ukraine. National correspondent Audrey Elnashar has the latest from Washington.
For the past month, a plan has quietly been forming. One the Trump administration hopes will end Russia's war in Ukraine.
The president supports this plan. It's a good plan for both Russia and Ukraine.
Ukraine views this plan as anything but good.
Ukraine may now face a very difficult choice, either the loss of dignity or the risk of losing a key partner.
The 28-point plan includes an expectation that Russia won't invade neighboring countries. Ukraine will get security guarantees, but it's unclear what those would be. And Russia will be reintegrated into the global economy. It also includes major territorial concessions on Ukraine's part, including land Russia hasn't even invaded yet. Ukraine would not be allowed to join NATO. In fact, the alliance would agree to not expand at all. And Ukraine's military would have to be roughly 250,000 personnel smaller than it is now.
It's not serious. It's kind of fake.
Ukrainian Parliamentary Foreign Affairs Chief Oleksandr Mereshko calls it nothing short of surrender.
It's written as if there is no international law, no UN charter, let alone constitution of Ukraine.
European allies whose support is also vital, all but outright rejecting the proposal.
We have to understand that in this war there is one aggressor and one victim, so we haven't heard of any concessions on the Russian side.
Therein lies the fundamental disagreement between President Trump and Europe. At least publicly, Trump has never framed this war as having one aggressor and one victim in need of America's full backing.
He's grown increasingly frustrated with both sides of this war, Russia and Ukraine alike, for their refusal to commit to a peace agreement.
Trump now putting Ukraine on the clock to say yes, setting next week Thursday, Thanksgiving, as the deadline. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar reporting.
Brazilian coffee exporters are celebrating the removal of U.S. tariffs on their product. Yesterday, President Trump canceled his 40% tariffs on Brazilian foods, including coffee, cocoa, and beef. He added them back in July in response to what he called unfair trade practices and the prosecution of one of his allies. Trump also cut tariffs on several other products last week to try to lower grocery prices. Well, New York Federal Reserve President John Williams sees room for bringing down interest rates in the near term. Williams, a key ally of Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, said that in a speech today. He's a member of what's called the Fed's leadership troika, which includes Powell and Vice Chairman Philip Jefferson. Stocks went up today after this news. But Bitcoin continued to fall, dropping almost 2% today. The gold standard cryptocurrency is down around 30% from this time last month. In other news now, college athletes remain banned from gambling on professional sports. The NCAA just said it got the necessary paperwork from 2/3 of 361 Division I schools today to stop a rule allowing the practice to take effect. Now, the rule was going to change this month, but it was automatically repealed for 30 days because 75% of the cabinet members did not vote in favor. A warning now for some holiday shoppers. Police say criminals are getting more aggressive and sophisticated. Law enforcement officials are warning that jugging could surge during the holiday season. That's when criminals follow victims from ATMs to their banks or stores to then steal from them. One of our reporters in Oklahoma spoke to police about how you can protect yourself.
Keep your head on a swivel, see who's around you, see if there's anything abnormal. How normal is it for somebody to just go like sit in a vehicle in a parking lot?
Police are also warning about road rage increasing during the holiday season. According to AAA, 92% of drivers reported behaviors like cutting someone off or speeding. And media outlets in Ohio are already reporting an uptick in holiday scams there. The FBI says scammers are posing as fake charities, sending missed package texts, some even using AI-generated voice cloning to impersonate family members. A step forward for car safety. The Transportation Department just unveiled a more realistic female crash test dummy. Officials say this will allow car makers to better understand how airbags and seatbelts affect women. Senators from both sides of the aisle advocated for this change. As studies show females are more likely to die or get seriously injured in car crashes. Israel's prime minister just met with his top security officials about increasing violence in the West Bank. This amid fresh allegations of Israeli settlers throwing rocks at Palestinian vehicles and setting fires. You can see some surveillance footage from the West Bank home. It's here on your screen. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has called violent Israeli settlers in the West Bank a handful of extremists. Palestinians say it's more than just a few bad apples. Now, gunmen attacked a Catholic school in Nigeria today and abducted over 200 school children and 12 teachers. According to the Associated Press, citing the Christian Association of Nigeria, that organization said it is trying to help recover the children. Police command say troops were sent to the area, and this was the latest series of attacks on Christians in Africa's largest country. Prosecutors say Minnesota is grappling with one of the biggest welfare fraud waves in U.S. history. And now counterterrorism officials warn some of that money very likely ended up in the pockets of Al-Shabaab, an al-Qaeda-linked terror group operating out of Somalia. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins reports.
Is the biggest funder of Al-Shabaab, the al-Qaeda-linked terror group in Somalia, actually the Minnesota taxpayer? A federal investigator says yes. An alarming claim first reported by City Journal, which spoke with multiple former federal agents. The U.S. Attorney's Office has charged dozens of defendants across multiple schemes, including housing aid fraud, pandemic child nutrition fraud, and false billing for autism therapy. In total, prosecutors say these schemes have cost Minnesota taxpayers billions of dollars.
Still, there are people that have legitimately could use those resources that are not getting those resources. It's past criminal.
Minnesota is home to one of the country's largest Somali communities. Former state fraud investigator Keish Magan, himself a Somali American, wrote last year that it's uncomfortable and true that nearly all defendants in these major fraud cases come from that community.
They have taken advantage of the most generous country in the world and one of the most generous states in that country.
And according to City Journal, some of the stolen money was sent overseas through informal cash transfer networks. Investigators say once that cash arrived in Somalia, al-Shabaab took a cut, whether the sender intended that or not.
Pretty much across the board, people that I spoke to said there really isn't a law enforcement solution to this problem. As you said, that's simply playing whack-a-mole. People pretty consistently told me that, there needs to be a policy change here.
Critics claim Minnesota leaders have tiptoed around the issue, fearing a backlash from the state's powerful Somali American voting bloc. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
Coming up, the mental health challenges fueling a workforce shortage within the construction industry. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start in Texas.
Flashbangs, a kicked-in motel door, and a late-night SWAT operation, all to rescue a woman police say was taken from her home early Wednesday morning. San Antonio police say the investigation began on Wednesday morning when they were dispatched to an assault in progress on Labor Street. Witnesses advised police the suspect took the victim and was no longer at the location. 27-year-old Destiny Furden was forced into a white Dodge Ram from her home by 35-year-old Jeffrey Garcia, prompting a clear alert. SAPD, Bexar County deputies, and Atascosa County authorities all searched for the vehicle. Detectives then traced Garcia and Furden to the Motel 6 on Warsbach Road, set up a perimeter, executed a search warrant. SWAT was able to enter the room, taking Garcia in custody with no issues. Inside the room, officers found Furden, who was taken to a local hospital for her injuries.
Dealing with manpower issues that they have no control over. They're dealing with a deadline that has already been set that likely isn't moving. They're dealing with Mother Nature and weather.
A leave-it-at-the-gate mentality will no longer work, says Slade Opikins, the president of R&O Construction, which has over 100 employees.
We've been booked out for probably the last 5 years, at least 6 to 12 months in advance with all our teams.
But the industry generally is just getting faster. The expectations are getting higher.
As demand grows, so does the strain on workers.
The industry is experiencing a huge labor shortage across the board.
Professor James Smith at BYU is conducting a long-term research study on mental health in construction. He says the lack of workers makes the production pressure worse and the work less appealing. That can drive up the cost for construction projects, which is why addressing the total worker health can help across the board.
The Washington GOP is collecting signature after signature to push the state to pass a new initiative requiring proof of citizenship to vote.
There is no due diligence. There's no checking when a person is automatically registered to vote, whether they are in fact legal to vote.
Currently, among the requirements to register to vote in Washington, you have to be a U.S. citizen and live in state. And if you are not and knowingly vote, that is a Class C felony. Still, hundreds of voters at this signing event in Issaquah are on board with the new initiative.
Providing an ID, I think, is something that's not too much to ask. See, as an immigrant, is one of the things that I cherish the most about America is the integrity of the voting system.
To prove citizenship under this initiative, voters would have to show an enhanced driver's license or identicard, a U.S. passport, a U.S. certificate of naturalization, a U.S. Department of State consular report of birth abroad, or an original certified U.S. birth certificate.
This reform doesn't suppress anything. It solves a problem we have.
Coming up, the U.S. Capitol Christmas tree just arrived in D.C. Why it's nicknamed Silver Bell right after this. The U.S. Capitol Christmas tree is now in Washington, D.C. The 53-foot red fir nicknamed Silver Bell arrived today. It's from the Humboldt-Toyabe National Forest, marking the first time the state of Nevada has provided the tree.
We chose the name Silver Bell because, we thought that it embodied the spirit of the Silver State, and she was so pretty.
She is pretty. Every year, the U.S. Forest Service provides a tree from one of the country's 154 national forests for display on the west lawn of the U.S. Capitol for the holiday season. After it's set up, the tree will be decorated with thousands of LED lights and handcrafted ornaments. That's all the time we have for now. Thanks for joining us for this edition of the National News Desk. I'm Taylor Murray.